Well, it's funny actually because before I was a DJ, which is an interesting story in and of itself, I was sort of making music before that. When I was doing that, it was still like really early. I hadn't really learned much about what I was doing, but enough to get a musical sense of things. Then Ryan decided I should start DJing, so he said, "Oh well, you know music stuff. You can DJ. I'm sure you've got this. Here's your first DJ gig. It's in a month. Be ready." So it's sort of doing the music has sort of always gone in parallel with doing the DJing stuff that I've been doing for the past year and a bit. And I think they sort of complemented each other because in the process of DJing you start to learn a lot of different musical structure, a lot of what works, what doesn't. I start to pay attention to what do I want to play in the club when I'm DJing, and that lets me focus on what do I want to put into a track that makes it something that's interesting that people want to hear. So it's not so much that I was a DJ first and a musician after. It was really more that they went hand in hand and sort of progressed both directions at the same time. So I feel that it was, you know, they're very complementary and just sort of helped each other out. Instead of just using one skill to improve the other, it was using one skill to improve the other, which would go back to the first one and then sort of have this feedback loop of getting slowly less bad at it. I think the most important style to include in your collection is what you like. There's a lot of people right now who seem to say, "Oh, you shouldn't like this," or "This isn't, you know, this isn't pure, this isn't allowed," or something. I think that's all just sort of bullshit. Like what you like and don't be ashamed of it. There's a lot of cool stuff that's going on right now that I'm into.
Yeah, basically what's influencing you lately?
What's influencing me lately? Oh, what I'm able to make as far as music goes is always like a step behind what I want to make. So I'm always sort of catching up to what I want to do. But I'm really interested right now in a lot of what I've been calling the new dark, which is, you know, the witch house or the new style of dark ambient or the sort of drag influenced stuff. You know, obviously the big names like Damon comes to mind. Hoping I can go to the Terminus Festival to see them because that would be really amazing, I'm sure. But you know, other bands in the genre, I'm you know, a fan of Ooh, or however you pronounce them, and Corvex Timmer. I don't really know how to pronounce that either, but I'm a big fan of all of his stuff. So that's just sort of one thing I've been paying attention to, but not just because I'm paying attention to it doesn't necessarily mean I've been able to incorporate it into my music yet. And I'm not here to assimilate other styles into my style. You know, I want my style to be its own thing, but I would like to sort of experiment in that direction while keeping my own sort of style. You know, there's a lot of other stuff too. You know, there's the usual club stuff, but that's never really been, you know, challenging music. Or not that music has to be challenging, but it's never been something that I thought about and said, that was something new and special. You know, I can think about it and say, hey, that's got a good beat and that would get people dancing at the club and, you know, has that aspect to it, and that's a good aspect. But, you know, I find that's less exciting, which is sort of ironic because the EP that's coming up is a little thumpy for my tracks, at least.
I wanted to ask you about that. Your track on the oil compilation, is that going to be on the EP?
No, I intentionally used a separate track.
Because that's an interesting track. I really liked it a lot.
Red Crush. Yeah.
A little bit harsher and darker, and is that something that kind of like those influences you're talking about, or?
Yeah, so a lot of the rhythmic noise stuff is really cool too. And obviously Ottawa has a really good history for rhythmic noise and that style of industrial, or that style of music. And I really would like to make more tracks like that. That one's actually a more recent track than one of the tracks on the EP. And actually, the track on the compilation, that track literally came together start to finish in one night. I sat down and I'm like, I just want to just friggin' crush stuff. I just want to have a really stompy, really aggressive track, but without it being, you know, your typical Unsi track or something. So I just like, I'm going to use a whole bunch of weird drum kits and distort them really bad and use you know, a lot of repeated drums and a lot of stuff like that. And I just sort of sat down, did it start to finish, and all of a sudden it was done, and I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty good. So I'd like to do more stuff like that. I think the next release, whatever I do, I'm going to sort of step back from the style of the EP that's coming out, or at least the style of my tracks on that EP, and focus on music that's a little slower, a little more down tempo, because you know the two tracks I have on this EP are like 129 BPM and 140, so they're on the faster end. I want to also try and focus on music that's a bit more sparse. It's got a bit more space to it, because a lot of my tracks are pretty dense. Red Crush being particularly dense, but that was sort of the point there. So that's sort of the goal for where I'm going, you know, but where I'm going and where I end up are rarely the same place. I think the Ottawa scene is really actually a pretty interesting scene. You know, I haven't been here nearly as long as a lot of other people. I moved to Ottawa from the East Coast, from Fredericton, New Brunswick, in 2009, and I really was pretty unfamiliar with this kind of scene, because in Fredericton, it's just not something that's there. So I moved to Ottawa, and I remember I went to Zaphod's on a Saturday night, because I heard Zaphod's was a cool place, and I go there and I'm wearing a Nine Inch Nails t-shirt or something, and someone comes up to me and says, "Why are you here on a Saturday?" I'm like, well, what do you mean? Why shouldn't I be here? Like, no. You should be here on a Tuesday. So, because Tuesday's the industrial night. So I went on a Tuesday and actually ran into a coworker there, Jeff Disher, and he says, you know, this is actually a thing that's a scene in Ottawa. You should, you know, it sounds like this is something you'd be interested in. You should come out to some of the events. And you know, that's how I sort of got into it, is through people I knew, and because I really liked the music. You know, when I was in Fredericton, I was into a lot of electronic dance music before that was the term they used, I guess. Always looking for something harsher, but never finding it. And when I came to Ottawa, all of a sudden, hey, there's this whole style of music that's exactly what you're looking for, and there's some cool people here doing some cool things. So that's sort of how I got introduced to the scene, and I think the scene in Ottawa is pretty cool. I think we got a lot of cool things going. We've got, you know, a ton of bands that are all sort of either related to the Ottawa scene, or are, you know, in Ottawa making music right now, which is sort of the whole point of the Oil Festival, is that, hey, we actually realize we've got a ton of cool bands here. Why don't we showcase them? So that's really cool to me. When I look at some other scenes, I find, you know, the whole scene globally seems to have stagnated a bit, but I almost see a resurgence coming. At least in the sense that new music's happening, you know, people are starting to break the mold again, and I think that's what gets people interested. A lot of this, that's where this new dark stuff comes in. It's like, or the Witch House, or this just dark ambient stuff, or just this new style is people saying, hey, you know, we've been doing this for a while, why don't we try something new? And people are interested again. you know, it's in the same spirit, but it's new, and I think Ottawa has a lot of cool stuff on that front as well. You know, when I've traveled to other places, I found that their scenes weren't that good. You know, I went to New York City, maybe I was in the wrong spot or I was in the wrong night, but you know, I talked to people and I said, oh, you know, where do I want to go for this weekend for the industrial scene in a club? And it's just, no one is really into it, and you know, the DJs weren't particularly skilled. So I found I was sort of distraught there. Though on the flip side, I really enjoyed my time in San Francisco. I went to the DNA, trying to not really be the same as everyone else. You know, we're really different from Toronto. We're much more heavy, much more aggressive, I think, in the style of music we listen to. And I think we're more willing to experiment with new bands or new styles of music at our club nights. So I think Ottawa has a lot of, you know, a lot of cutting edge stuff going on, and I think that's pretty cool. And I really like that about the Ottawa scene. For the concert, I think it's going to be great. You know, I'm worried only because it's my first show. Well, my first show where I'm doing, you know, a set on my own. I performed once with Keith with the Delta Theta project because he had remixed one of my tracks, so I did vocals for a live performance of that remix, but that was just, you know, one track. And that was hard enough on its own, so now I'm doing a whole set. So I'm worried, but you know, it's that good kind of worried, where it's, you know, all of a sudden I get to try something new again. It's like the first time I DJ'd. You know, I'm standing in front of everyone doing something I've never really done before. But it's awesome. It's a really good feeling. So I have that same feeling for Oil. But I also think it's really cool. I'm really looking forward to it just because of what it means. It means that a scene has come together and said, hey, we can be cool, and here's how, and we're going to do it, and we don't care what anyone else says. And people are starting to notice. People, you know, I've done, you know, I've looked around the internet for people talking about the Oil Festival, and there's quite a number of people, not even from Ottawa, just talking about this festival, saying, hey, this is a pretty cool thing, you know, they're doing cool stuff in Ottawa. So I think, on top of it being a really cool concert that I can't wait to see, I think it stands as a really cool concept and testament to what Ottawa can do when we decide to do something. The compilation is available at oilslick.bandcamp.com. Right now it's the only thing up there, but I think one of the things that could be cool about this Bandcamp page is that it could sort of be used for other Ottawa artists that want to sort of collaborate, for example, that don't necessarily want to put it on their own individual Bandcamp pages or something, or for artists that maybe could get some extra exposure from an established page. Not that it's terribly well established as it is, but, you know, having only existed for 2 days, but, you know, it's something that builds, and, you know, if it's building with 5 bands as opposed to 1, you can build a following pretty quickly. So the compilation's been doing pretty well, I would say, for the first 2 days. In 2 days, we've already got probably by now about 170 downloads and close to 900 plays, which is pretty nuts for 2 days. I think that's super cool, and a lot of people are talking about it, and a lot of people are actually listening to it and saying, hey, this is actually a super cool compilation. And I think that's really cool, because that's sort of a validation that not only do we, you know, think what we're doing is cool, other people think it's cool too. You know, it wouldn't have got that many downloads, it wouldn't have got that many plays if what we were doing weren't high quality stuff, if it weren't really cool stuff. But I think the numbers sort of speak for themselves, and this is before, you know, a lot of people, it's before what I imagine to be a critical mass for the compilation. I still think there's a lot of opportunity for the word to get out. And I think it will, and I think we'll see a few more spikes in downloads and a few more spikes in plays before the Oil Festival. And even after the Oil Festival's done, it's sort of a good indicator of the state of Ottawa Industrial in 2013. So if we do this thing regularly, maybe we'll do it once a year. It will, I think it will help sort of develop a timeline for what's going on in Ottawa too. So I think that's, if we keep this going, we can have some pretty cool stuff. Bandcamp is really great for music collectors and people who appreciate, music that's not found in music stores. They added the social features recently, and I think that was probably the best thing they could have done, not only for fans, but for them as a business too. On both sides, it's sort of co-beneficial, because all of a sudden I can see what all my other music geek friends are listening to, and seeing what I'm missing out on, they can do the same back to me. So I think socially Bandcamp is really good, and obviously I get a lot of my music information from Facebook. If you follow enough of the right people, you start to hear about new bands. That's how I find any of the new bands I find. Usually it's through social networking. It's the, hey, I'm following this band, and all of a sudden they're talking about this other band. So I like the first band, so obviously the band they're talking about is probably pretty cool too. Or that band that I do like, they're on a compilation with these other bands. So there's probably some commonality there, and I probably want to check them out more. Or I'll follow a musician, and I'll look at what they're getting on Bandcamp and looking what's influencing them. All this stuff is becoming much more visible and transparent, and all of a sudden music discovery is becoming a whole new, it's a whole new paradigm for music discovery. And I think that's really exciting, and I think that's really enabling a lot of smaller acts to get noticed, above and beyond just the normal Facebook social networking. Even though Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff is still pretty essential. But combining that with stuff like Bandcamp really helps solidify those types of connections. Another useful place I find is following the right people on Mixcloud. If you follow DJs on Mixcloud, or people that will make mixtapes, or people that just do podcasts on Mixcloud. If you follow the right people, people that have similar tastes in you, you'll look at the track lists that they spin, and you'll say, hey, that was a really cool track, I've never heard of that before. But it's them sort of making you a mixtape every once in a while, and all of a sudden you get to discover all these new bands. So I think Mixcloud and various DJing podcasts and stuff like that, I think they're pretty awesome too. I think I find a lot of good music that way. Well, I started making music, initially I started making music when I was in high school. I had, just a computer with Fruity Loops on it that I found somewhere off the internet. And that's back when it was called Fruity Loops. It was still called Fruity Loops, and I had no idea what I was doing. I remember being perplexed by, the most basic of synthesis concepts like cutoff and resonance. I'm like, what is this cutoff thing? Everyone uses it, it makes cool sounds, and whenever I turn the knob it doesn't sound good. So, I think I made a whole album's worth of music. It was all pretty terrible. I still have it though, and every once in a while someone will come over and we'll be like, hey, what's this? I'm like, you can't listen to that. And it usually inevitably ends with them stealing the album and then listening to it and laughing at it, and then I say, yeah, I told you. So that's when I started doing music, but there was a big hiatus. Can I really go on a hiatus if I never really produced anything? I guess is another question. But university happened, and obviously I was a busy student, didn't have so much time for music. But after I finished university and I started working full time, I had enough extra cash to do some interesting musical things, or at least pick up some gear, enough to get me started. Because I was still sort of interested in making music. Now that I discovered, this cool scene with music I'm like, oh, well, why don't I, try my hand at this? Maybe it will work, maybe it won't. That's actually why I named the band Apriorism, because I went into it really not knowing what I'm doing. I have no prior knowledge here. I'm just going to, jump in, do it. Doesn't matter that I don't know what I'm doing, and see what comes out. My first few tracks were garbage, again, this time around. But you know, if you meet the right people and you can get the right feedback, you can start to hone your skills pretty quickly. I think again, Ryan has been a really good influence there, because I can send him a track and he'll say, you know, he will give me the truth on the track. He'll say, oh, I like this, 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 and this, but also say, hey, this part right here, it got real boring, or you know, you really need to bring your vocals out a bit more, or you know, the synth, you know, it sort of doesn't fit with this other stuff. He's not scared to give good constructive criticism, which is hard to get. You know, you ask a lot of people, oh, what do you think of this track? And you know, usually 90% of the time they say, oh, it's great, it's the best thing in the world, you know. And I'm like, well, no, this isn't that good. It's a demo sketching out some sounds that might evolve into something, but it's definitely not good yet. So a lot of people just sort of blindly tell you it's amazing, it's the best thing in the world. And you know, they're trying to be nice, but doesn't necessarily, it's not so helpful. So finding the right people that will give you the good criticism and being able to take that criticism when you get it really sort of helps progress your style and progress your skills. So I think I've been probably working on this since 2010. You know, never having an official release up until Oil, when my first real release will come out. So it's a few years in the making. We'll see what happens.